I burned out in a terrible, horrible, very bad way. My family would be asleep and I would be on email hours into the morning, or I would catch myself crying at work in the bathroom, in the stall, like just hoping that nobody would see me, thinking, this can't be it. That this cannot be what life is about. These behaviors are the exact same behaviors that get us promoted, that get us recognized at work, that get doors open for us. And so I kept doing it because there was a really high incentive. I had hustled like it was a sport with no halftime and no water breaks, and I was so miserable. My body shut down. I got really sick to the point where my doctor said, you cannot work. If that hadn't happened, I would have kept going.
Why do so many high performers become workaholics even when work is clearly costing them their life?
I think it is such, and first of all, great to see you before I dive right in. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my
And
pleasure.
I think the reason we do it is because it's rewarded over and over and over again. So these behaviors that, as you described, are really sucking the life out of us are the exact same behaviors that get us promoted, that get us recognized at work, that get doors open for us. And so, at least from my own experience, I kept doing it because there was a really high incentive to do it.
Yeah. So you found yourself, and which I know drove you to write the new book, but you found yourself living this challenge, and it's really a healthy addiction. I mean, it's an unhealthy addiction, but it's a accepted addiction is what I meant. It's accepted. Like it's one of those things where, people, like you said, they genuinely reward you for the success of overworking, and it becomes something that you're so engaged in. Tell me a little bit about what you felt when you went through this, and what brought you out of it.
It was awful, and it was I often say that I burned out in a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad way. It was the worst, one of the worst experiences of my life, and I think at the time it felt so sudden. It felt like, gosh, how did I get here? But in retrospect, it had been building for years of my career. So in terms of how I felt confused, I felt frustrated, I felt scared, I felt duped. Like I was doing all the right things. I had racked up student loans. And you're a soccer lover, so I had hustled like it was a sport with no halftime and no water breaks, and I was so miserable. My family would be asleep and I would be on email hours into the morning, or I would literally catch myself crying at work in the bathroom with my feet up in the stall, like just hoping that nobody would see me, thinking, this can't be it. That this cannot be what life is about. And so that was the reckoning. It started this whole adventure of figuring out, who did I really want to be, if not this person who just overworked all the time.
When you did the deep dive, what pushed you there? What got you to that point? I mean, obviously the accolades and that kind of stuff, but what was the deeper vision? Because you don't heal from that by just quitting your working habits. You have to actually dive deep into, self-worth or value or feeling the accomplishments, or what was it for you?
And that's the hard part, is that patterns will keep being patterns unless we interrupt them. So I had burnt out and I thought, well, clearly that only happens one time, right? You burn out, you recover, and now you live this life that's burnout free. Except it wasn't. I actually burnt out a second time. So after I left my C suite job, I started my own company thinking I was going to be a a modern CEO, a burnout free CEO. And 2 years later, I found myself in the exact same spot. So that's when the real reckoning began, which is, what is driving this? This isn't about external forces. This is about me. This is about the stories that I've inherited, intentionally or unintentionally, about what it means to be of value in this world. And it wasn't until I untangled those that I really freed myself from the overwork.
You think it's fair to say work becomes this place where people go when everything else in life might be messy or out of control? So is work a place people often go to hide from life itself?
I think it can be. Yes, I think my pantry is another. I have the most organized pantry. So I know for me in times of stress, I want to bring order to chaos. And a work environment is a wonderful place to do that because unlike alphabetizing my soup, which doesn't get a lot of accolades, when you over control in the workplace, folks think, wow, she's really prepared. She's really thoughtful. She's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. So, yes, I think you're absolutely spot on.
I think it's also kind of challenging, I would imagine, you know, I've talked about this on previous podcasts. My mom is somebody who put in lots and lots and lots of hours at work as a paralegal in many many years. She was, you know, running the closings and doing all this work, and I think what I learned as a CEO and a leader of a company is, you know, the differences between men and women in the workforce and how much you have to get done in a shorter amount of time than most men. And these are generalized statements. I know not
Sure.
everybody has the same world, but on average,
Mhm.
my mom still had to come home. Now, this was in the 80s and into the 90s. She still had to come home and do all the things that moms do. And that pressure to feel all of that at 2 places can be really, really overbearing, and you know, I didn't see my mom break down, I'm not saying that, but I definitely saw the challenge, and then from the child side, you know, I've built a lot of my lifestyle. I've helped a lot of people, especially women executives, rise up the ladder and side by side because of how I saw my mom work. And because I knew it wasn't always rewarded the way that I knew I could help control. And, you know, so, but it does become an identity
Yeah.
and it could be a very challenging one. Do you find that to be a common thread?
I do, and what a beautiful tribute that you just gave to your mom. Because I know as a mom, the thing we want most in the world is to create a good environment for our family that has a lasting impact, so I love the tribute that you just gave to her. Uh, and yes, I think that is true. I think it is part of why I worked at a wild speed, especially when our kids were young, because I wanted to get home to do the daycare pickup, to do the soccer, to do the dinner, the homework, all the things, and then once they were in bed, once they were sound asleep, that's when my second workday began. Because, and you know this, you're in back to back meetings all day long. So the only time to do email, the only time to prep for the next day or to do any strategic thinking is outside of the office. So I completely agree with what you're saying. And that pressure can just be unrelenting. I also love how you framed it, Scott, where you said that this isn't these aren't, we can't say this is true for everybody, and yet there really is a vast difference, I believe, in how men and women experience the workforce.
Yeah, I can tell you flat out. I said it on my last show. We had this conversation. I was talking to someone who had been a major executive in HR at Fortune 500 companies,
Yeah.
and I said, you know, here's the difference. When I wanted to work late because I screwed around and did not do what needed to be done earlier in the day because maybe I went and talked about the Super Bowl coming up this weekend, or
Yeah. The
I
loss.
whatever it was, I had water cooler talk that went long. I had a long lunch. I
Yeah.
met a friend. I could do any of that and then just call my wife and say, who was a school teacher, and say, Adrian, I'm gonna be late tonight. And she accepted it. And it's no problem. But when my mom wasn't there, or if my wife wasn't there, the whole house disrupts.
Yeah.
So all of the equilibrium of the house, and I have 2 boys.
Mhm.
So, you know, I could tell you that, my sister and I growing up would just wait for my mom to come home,
Yes.
and everything would get better
Yeah.
when she got home. And so there is significant differences in life for men and women still, but it's changed a little bit in how the roles have changed.
Mhm.
I know that my dad wasn't doing any of the things that I do or had to do or was expected to do as a spouse.
Yes.
And they didn't have soccer practices that started at 4 o'clock, or like things just changed. And you're like, when did the world like stop acknowledging that people don't just make their own schedules? And
Yeah.
but we all figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, exactly, and sometimes we make it figure out we make it work better, and sometimes not so much, and I think a huge piece of it is not just what happens in the home, because I think that is so important, but also how it's looked at outside the home. So, can I share a quick story with you? Because I
Please,
think
let's
this sums it up perfectly. So,
yeah.
for a large part of my career, I worked in the public sector, and my job revolved a lot around the legislative session. So, during legislative session, this well, so my husband would take the lead on the doctor's appointments. He would take the lead on taking the kiddos to the dentist. So it's after session. I take my daughter to the dentist and I go to check her in. And the woman behind the counter says, "Oh, Clara, you do have a mom." And then she looks at me and says, "You are so lucky. You are so lucky to have a husband to take the kids to the dentist." And I will tell you, I was so buried in shame in that moment. I just wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. And it was years ago. Our daughter's driving now. This was when she was at the pediatric dentist. But if I could go back in time, I would say to that woman, I am. And he's really lucky too.
Yeah.
He's really lucky that his wife has a job that allows him the flexibility to be able to take time off to take our kids to the dentist. But we don't offer in my experience, we do not offer that same grace to women that we do to men. My husband was a hero for going to the dentist, which
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a
Well,
double standard.
I think that the standards have not caught the expectations in marriages and relationships have changed. The
Yes.
standards from the generation before and the outsiders looking in are still very judgmental in that capacity. And, it is what it is. I did, my wife was a school teacher. So the
Yes.
benefit is, she was home every day. I've said this before on podcast as well.
Mhm.
Growing up, the part that I disliked the most about my mom working, and back then it was a clear line. It was like 50 to 60% of your friends' moms didn't work. And
Right.
I went to a Catholic school where it was definitely different in diversity. It wasn't like everybody was wealthy. 50% of the
Mhm.
population in a Catholic school is there on financial aid.
Yeah.
So you have lots of families that are working hard together. You have other families who are financially more stable.
Mhm.
And so I saw a lot of different disparity, but I hated coming home and not having anybody there. And we were those latchkey kids back in the 80s, it was fine. So even in the summertime, once you age out of the programs or you didn't want to go anymore, you were home alone all the time.
Yeah.
And so that part was really key. But with my wife being a school teacher, she was always home. And I thought that was such a great thing.
Yeah.
But because of her job, she also missed every field trip.
Right.
She missed because she was in school when the kids were in school. I
Sure.
went to every school party.
Yeah.
I got to really be a part of my kids' lives. And even though I was leading my company, I had the
Mhm.
flexibility and freedom to do whatever I wanted. And it was often looked at like I was doing something out of the ordinary. And
Yeah.
but I'm from the generation where we babysat our we you it, if you asked our dads,
Mhm.
they were babysitting the kids on the weekends.
Yes, and not very well, at least in our house.
No, no, it meant that we were just in trouble the whole time.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's very normal, and I'm sorry that those comments hurt people so much. And
Yeah.
I think the reality is it explains and shows where you were at the time too,
Yeah.
because when a comment can cut you so deep, it's
Yes.
almost like we've lost a percentage of our identity. Because
Mhm.
if when you know that he's lucky too,
Yes.
you just smile and you move on. But when it actually hits you in a shameful spot, it actually brings something to the surface that you haven't thought about. And now it makes you embarrassed, it makes you uncomfortable.
Yep.
And the reality is they have a great mom. And
Yeah.
they're doing the things that we're just doing the things we need to in a family.
Yes. Yeah, and you'll often see me in an airport or in a loud grocery store. Like, I am the one that goes up to the mom with the screaming kiddo. Like, not in a weird way, just in a you're doing great. Like, just hang in there kind of way because there's so much judgment and there's so much of the other that it's nice to counteract a little of that with some support.
Well, I mean, you and I are both sitting at a similar point in life.
Mhm.
And so I think one of the biggest challenges for us, for me, having a 16 and a 19-year-old, and then I have a little brother who has two kids under two.
Mhm.
So it's such a big difference. But I'm watching them and I'm thinking about how fast it went.
Yeah.
And when you think about how fast it goes, and you look at what matters most, nothing else is really that important, and the little things that I valued the most were, like, putting the kids to bed every night. I always handled putting them to bed because my wife was completely fed up with them by the time it got to bedtime,
Sure.
and now the boys will still say, "Dad, you didn't do that." Like, I'm like,
Or
"I
you
did
even
it
work.
every night."
Right.
What are you talking about?
Right.
So, but I look back on those moments, and those are the things that I love the most. It's the
Yeah.
things I miss the most, but they go by so fast. So when you walk up to that mom, what you're also saying is, I'm talking to myself back then.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
saying
Yeah.
that it's okay, and I'm giving you, because any assurance I can get
Yeah.
from anyone on the outside just feels like someone acknowledges me and I exist. And it is hard, but we're gonna get through it, and we're all here, and we're okay that your baby's crying.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when the kids were little, at least I was just in survival mode, working full time, all the things. But I don't think I knew just how much they would need me later too. So it always felt like there was this clock ticking, like, oh my gosh, once they go to college, then this part of parenting is over. And it's not over, it just changes. It just morphs into and evolves into something different. And so yes, it goes fast, and I think that it goes at whatever pace we're willing to experience it.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch them grow up.
Yeah,
Um, but I will tell you, I don't think anything beats the feeling of walking in and having your kids run up to you and see you when you walk in the door.
it's true.
That feeling that you have as a father, especially, I can only
Yeah,
speak as me. You don't get, mom is needed and wanted all the time. Like, it's
yeah.
a normal thing. Dad is kind of that phase where, that phase right there is
Mhm.
the one where I was the most tired. I was the most
Oh, sure.
struggling. I was the most, building the business, trying to stay
Yeah.
alive. Like, I remember one Christmas, the air conditioner and heat broke, and we had to use
Mm,
one of those credit card checks to, eight to $10,000 that we
yeah.
borrowed to write, like, 3 days before Christmas. And I'm thinking, like, how am I going to make this up? And
Oh,
this, because we started from nothing, and so this
right.
was the battle. And so they're getting the best you have at the moment, but they're not always getting the best of you.
Yes. Yes. Beautifully said.
When you think about workaholics in general, people, and I'm going to use that word a couple more times here, but
Mhm.
when you think of this workaholic and you think of this person like yourself, like I feel I have been in my life as well,
Mhm.
um, what do you think, where do you see them most mess up? Where do you see them neglect the most? If you look at my life model, love,
Mhm.
the who's in our life that matter
Yeah.
most, that's your family, the people
Yes.
you love being around. Impact is your work. And so this is
Mhm.
kind of the impact. It's your purpose beyond your work, but it's a lot of times through your work. Faith,
Mhm.
something bigger than yourself. For me, that's God.
Yep.
And energy, how we show up to the world, a healthy mind, a healthy body, healthy spirit. Where do you see people, through your experience, through your research, and even personally, maybe neglect the most?
There is one that stands out more than any other without even a close second. And the number one place that I see folks neglect is themselves. And it's for all of the things that you just described. Well, of course, we're not going to let work suffer. Of course, we're not going to let our families suffer. Of course, we're not going to let the community suffer. So, to me, what I've seen over and over again is that we don't end up giving the support to ourselves. We end up neglecting ourselves. And I spend a lot of time in my work with leaders and teams around values, around their organizational values, around their personal values. And here was one of the most painful lessons for me is that at the time of my burnout, my epic, awful burnout, I was living into my values. I was very thoughtfully every day, and I mean this literally every day, thinking about my top 2 values. Am I living into them? And they were family and service, and I was. I was giving everything I had to my family. I was being of service at work all day, every day, but I wasn't doing any of that for me. So to sit down with a leader, and it's happened dozens of times, where we look at their values of what's driving them, what's important to them, what are their core beliefs, but are they included? And many times they aren't. And if I'm not in my values, then I'm just surviving. When I put myself into my values, that's how I move over into thriving. So I think that's how we move out of the neglect that you were talking about. It's how am I not just living my values, but how am I living those for me in the service of me?
Is that what happened when you burn out the second time? Is that you left this first job, you thought it was the job? So I often find that a lot of people, and I have a question here, but
Yeah.
I find a lot of people blame as a leader
Mhm.
in a company. I get a lot of people that will come to me and they'll say, "Work is killing me. Work is this, and this is the problem." This, and they're neglecting the fact that maybe their spouse has been out of town on business for 3 of the 4 weeks, or their kids have been sick, or they,
Mhm.
I've had conversations with women that have had two babies in three
Yeah.
years, and they're like, "Work is killing me." I'm like, "It's not. You're just doing it all, and it's
Right.
very difficult." And
Yep.
so reframing them around life is something that has been more helpful because it's not always work. So you found that you thought you were solving the problem
Mhm.
and the problem was work to you, but then you got out and you reassessed, and what happened?
The problem was me. So I took myself wherever I went, and it was such a wild awakening, and not in a great way. So I had been looking at this wellness retreat for years. I mean, I had read all the Q&As. I had them as a bookmark. I just in times of desperation, I would just look online at this wellness retreat in the desert. And so
Is it the
right,
mirror? Is it the one in Arizona? Like
it is.
yeah,
Yes, it's
I've
in
seen it.
Sedona. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, and so when I burned out the second time, I was sitting in a parking lot at the grocery store doing email, which as one does, and I looked at that website and I just called. It was evening. I thought there's no way they're gonna pick up the phone in Arizona, but a woman picked up the phone, and we were talking, and she had said, "We just had a spot that canceled this week. If you can get here in 2 days, the spot's yours." And I had just had a training that got canceled that week, so I had an open spot on my calendar. There was this retreat that booked out months in advance that had an opening, so I just took it. I didn't even check with my husband because I knew that anything that made me less like I was in that moment, he was gonna say, "I'm in. I'm all in." So, anyway, long story short, I end up in Sedona having this complete breakthrough about, wow, work wasn't the problem. I'm the problem. Where did that come from? And that's really when things shifted. It's not an external demand that was causing me so much pain. It wasn't an external demand that was making me a workaholic. It was the unresolved stress story that I had been carrying my whole life that had led me there.
Yeah, isn't it funny how we often look for a culprit and we only scratch the surface? So
Yes.
with the culprit, we're only looking for the problem that we can solve right now, like doctors often do,
Mhm.
where they prescribe something to numb you or heal you from the moment, but they're not giving you the solution to what caused the problem. We have to get deeper to really get to that, and that's really the challenge, and it's really easy to fall back into the
Yeah.
flow because it's how you're made. It's how
Yes.
you were brought up. It's
Mhm.
where you felt loved or appreciated or respected.
Mhm. Exactly. In Brene Brown's research, so she talks about that the number one shame trigger at work is the fear of irrelevance. And to really let that sink in for a minute, that the number one shame trigger at work is the fear of irrelevance. And in her research, she found that the number one response to that is we armor up. Whatever our armor is, whatever we do to self protect. Well, my armor is overwork. So it made perfect sense that it became this vicious cycle of whenever you start to feel that way, well, then you work harder and then it just becomes this snowball that moves faster than I would have ever imagined.
Yeah, and it's really funny to me because with the best decisions, both financially and personally, that I've ever made in my life, they came from slowing down to speed up. So if I need to reset, it came from having some moment where I stopped, assessed,
Yep.
acknowledged, accepted, moved
Mhm.
forward, but there might have been a pivot or a slowed down moment, and it's so often that we think just because 'cause we're moving fast that everything is good,
Yeah.
and, it's when you slow down that you feel the most uncomfortable. That's the other part. When you're in that moment, it's
Mhm.
those weekends where, I have had this many times in my life where we talked about soccer, and my boys at one time were playing in the same program, then they're playing in 2 different programs, and we're traveling, and then one's in college, and so you're trying to balance all this stuff, and then
Mhm.
everything would cancel on the weekend, and we're running so fast, so it's
Yep.
not always personal. I mean, not always professional, it's
Work.
also
Mhm.
personal, and something would stop, and then I was paralyzed. I had so much to do, but I couldn't do anything because I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
And that's not a fun feeling.
No, and you're not alone. Because my guess is the more you tell people that that was your experience, I would bet you get a lot of, "Yeah, me too. I've had that exact same." Yes, it happens so much, and I think that when we're moving at that pace, then the quiet starts to almost drive more anxiety. Like, well, clearly I must be missing something, or what's happening that I'm not paying attention to, and it's a really painful loop. When you mentioned slow down, it made me laugh. Can I show you something
Yeah,
behind me?
sure.
So I bought this so I
Yep.
bought a 4-foot sloth, as one does, and I just keep it in my office as this reminder to slow down during the day. If a client needs an extra 10 minutes, let's just slow down and take the 10 minutes. Or if my lunch ends up taking a little longer than I thought. So it's just this visual reminder, because if I don't have that, then my natural pace is going to just pick up at any given moment.
Well, I think it's also important to know yourself. And for me, I'm a sprinter. I say this often. I even when I play sports,
Mhm.
I'm a sprinter. I run at 100 miles an hour wherever I'm at. So on a soccer field, I'm playing at the top and I'm sprinting, and my job is to results, score, and speed. But there's walking in between, right?
Yeah.
There's get jogging back, there's slowing down. What I learned about my career and about success in the space of finding that healthy work life imbalance, however
Mhm.
I think we're always a little imbalanced, but I found that once I acknowledged I was a sprinter, I started to build in those walkbacks, those breaks,
Mhm.
and I do much better when there's transitional moments. So where I still struggle to this day is if I'm go 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 go, and then I have to go right into something where I need to be kind and gentle, or I need to be
Mhm.
relaxed, you know, it's like it has to be a downward shift for me. I can't just so I what I do is I try to actually build into my day. I started doing I read a Men's Health article. It's probably been 20 years.
Mhm.
And I was like, I don't nap. I can't nap. And this Men's Health article said you gain 2.5 hours of productivity on a 20-minute nap, and it had directions 20, and I don't follow directions, never, but I awful at it. So I
Uh-huh.
followed directions, and I
Mhm.
said, okay, I'm going to set it for 25 minutes, and I'm going to teach myself how to nap.
Yes.
And I started doing this 20 years ago, and in the middle of my day I will find a 25-minute pocket. I will set the alarm for
Mhm.
25 minutes. I lay down. I put on classical music because I like to listen to something in the background,
Mhm.
and I sleep for like 15 to 20 minutes,
Yeah.
and I wake up and I'm refreshed, and I feel like I gave myself time. I also don't start too fast in the morning. So if work is going to drive you, starting slower in the morning allows me to have a little bit more leeway, and that has given me more success. I get as much or more done by doing that than I did where I was checking emails at 6:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
And so I don't what are some of the things that you've done to counterbalance this challenge?
I was just in awe at your level of self-awareness because I think that that's what's missing so often is not being able to try new things because you could have read that article and just set it aside. I'm not a napper. I'm not going to try it. But this idea of constantly trying something new. And so for me, it's very similar to yours in that it's being very thoughtful about the bookends of my day. And I think during COVID, that's where it got so complicated for so many of us is that there really weren't any bookends. There wasn't a commute. There wasn't a get the kids off to school. There weren't these natural breaks in the day. So I've tried to be really thoughtful about what are my signals that now my day is underway and what are the signals that now I'm kind of coming off the work ramp. And some days I do better than others. There's some days where the ramp is closed. We're on a deadline and we got to go. But for the most part, it's trying to be much more intentional instead of just feeling as if life is happening to me. My work schedule is just happening to me, trying to really take some autonomy back.
Yeah, many years ago, I created my life model, and I didn't call it a life model. I just created 4 parts of my life like you did your 2 main values,
Yeah.
and I built it out because I was always, aware of what I wasn't doing, but I was so aware of what I wasn't doing that I wasn't aware of what I was doing, and
Oh.
so I needed to focus on both, and
Hmm.
so I started to use the tool to say, "Okay, if I love these people, who are they?" Like, I'm so tired of listening to people talk all the time about how the reason they do all this is for their family,
Hmm.
and yet they never actually wanna do anything with their family,
Your family. Yeah.
right? Like, I
Mm,
mean, this is I
yeah.
listen to guys all the time in finance, like, everything I'm doing for my family. I'm like, "Tell me about some of the things you're doing with your family." "Oh, man, these kids they're doing their own thing now." And I'm like, "Well, how are you prioritizing their thing?"
Yeah.
And I have these very shallow, frustrating conversations,
Hmm.
and I'll be like, "Listen, I had to be aware enough to identify the things that I wanted to incorporate into my life."
Yeah.
And same thing at work, like, what was I doing beyond my day job? Energy, how was I showing up when my health would get bad? What was I doing and why? And so I
Hmm.
created that tool to actually be an X-ray lens into the areas where I was imbalanced, then I could focus on the areas that were good and I needed to actually give the energy to. So if I knew my wife and I were not clicking in a moment,
Hmm.
it was why was it? It was because I was working too much. It was because I was disconnected when I came home. It was because I
Yeah.
was upset about something that had nothing to do with our relationship. Like,
Hmm.
what is it? But identifying it, healing it, and focusing on it was such a powerful way to combat those challenges. So self-awareness is not an awful thing.
No, it not at all, and I think especially with the examples that you just gave, the absence of self-awareness would have created more of what you had. So if you're feeling 'cause I love the example you gave with your wife. Adrian, is that what you
Yeah,
said?
that's right.
Yeah, so there can be a moment where you're having a disconnect, and then it can go one of 2 ways. Well, now you're disconnected for the next 3 days, or we pause, we figure out what happened, we repair, and now we're back on track. So it's just those tiny little moments, and they happen all day, every day where we're at these crossroads and we're making decisions that end up impacting our life in so many ways.
How does someone tell that they're at a burnout spot? So you had 2 burnouts. You really the second one, just to catch the listener up, the second one is you leave your C-suite type role. You
Mhm,
go and I'm gonna build my own company and control it. You
mhm.
end up in Sedona at a breakthrough retreat
Yeah,
to heal yourself because you've done it again.
mhm.
What are the signs that someone feels burnout?
I think the signs look different for everyone, but there are some that are universal. And so if you look at how the World Health Organization defines burnout, they talk about it in 3 different dimensions. So the first one is just overwhelming exhaustion. So not I'm tired because I didn't sleep well, but exhaustion, just that deep in your bones exhaustion. The second one is a feeling of cynicism where you start to feel negative about your job. And I saw that. I tend to have a pretty positive outlook on life. I tend to have a pretty optimistic way of moving through the world. And as I look back, that was absolutely true for me. These little sprinkles of cynicism that come in. And the third one I think is the most painful one, which is a lack of self confidence. You start to really lose that ability of belief in yourself, even if you're working harder than ever, especially when you're working harder than ever. So leaders ask me the question that you just did all the time. Well, how do I know if my team is burnout? How do I know if I'm burnout? And I think we just have to be curious. It's about paying attention. And so often it takes someone outside of you to say what you're not seeing. And I have been in more conversations than I would like, asking leaders really painful, curious questions about their own levels of burnout.
Who brought it to your attention outside of yourself?
My body brought it to my attention. So I wish I wish I could say that I had an awareness and chose to do something different. I went on a long walk and decided I was gonna live in a new way. That's not at all what happened. My body shut down. I got really, really sick to the point where my doctor said, "You cannot work right now." And I'll tell you, Scott, if that hadn't happened, I would have kept going. I there is and I believe that to my core that had that not happened, I would have just kept doing what I was doing despite how much pain I was in. So for me, it was my body saying, "Enough is enough. We can't take it anymore."
Now, how do the kids react to the new you? So, you talk about your children and how much you love. We talked about soccer and Ted
Yeah.
Lasso and all the cool things that we
Mhm.
were pre-show talking. How did you see the family respond?
I'm laughing because our son is in college right now, and he'll often joke about how many breaks I take during the day. So he'll send me a text message, "Mom, are you on another break?" Because I do. Like, I'll have a meeting, and then I'll take the dog on a walk, or I have a meeting, and then I head out for the afternoon. So, in terms of how do they experience the new me, I hope to think that well, um, it's been really fascinating, though, over this last year with the process of writing, because I think the writing was an all-consuming process for me, and so I started to feel that kind of that uneasiness of, "Oh, this is what that feels like. This is what it starts to look like when I'm up before everybody else, when I'm awake long after everyone else." So I know that I'm rambling, but I
No, no,
think
I
that
like
they
it.
experience it as a lot of fun. I hope.
So when you did start the process of writing,
Mhm.
and your book is Cheers to Monday: The Surprisingly Simple Method to Lead and Live with Less Stress and More Joy. What does is this a go-to guide for people to to write the recipe to enjoy their lives? Is that a better way to turn work into something that doesn't have to be a battle? Is that the premise of what you're trying to accomplish? And then what drove you to write that?
That's exactly what it is. So I describe it as it's a joyful rebellion. It is a joyful rebellion against stress, against burnout, against working the way that we've always worked. And what drove me to write it, and I know this is going to sound corny, but this is truly my heart, is that I thought no one should go through what I went through. No one should have their body shut down to the point where they are not functioning. So I thought if I could share my story, if I could share this framework that came from all of the interviews and the focus groups and the research, then maybe that would help create a joyful rebellion for others too. And I'll tell you what gets me even more excited about work. And I say this sometimes to CEOs, and I think, God, are they going to fire me off this contract? But what gets me even more excited about the changes at work are the ripple effects that happen outside of work. Because, and you know this, that when we are exhausted every day from 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 or 8 to 7, you're not your best self at home. And so the more that we can shift the way that we work, it has a ripple effect on families and communities. And that's what gets me really excited.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's the kind of read that could get anybody excited to enjoy Monday. It's funny how discipline has always been something that I appreciate, and I
Yeah.
don't always love it, but once I do it, I feel really good. And so
Hmm.
once I establish a strategy, it doesn't matter if it's Monday or Wednesday or Friday or any day.
Mhm,
I've built the discipline into whatever it is that's important to me, and then I execute it.
mhm,
And, that level of action separates people from most of the people they know when
mhm,
they're just putting that, and people that listen to this show are the kinds of people that are constantly doing more. One thing that I think is really interesting about burnout is a lot of times we're burning out and we're putting all of our effort in and we're not even receiving the value that we are worth, that
mm,
we deserve. I meet more people that I see greatness in, that I know that this person is destined for bigger and better things.
yeah,
And yet they're driving in a current environment that is not as healthy for them. And when you've been there and you've seen it, you could see it very quickly.
mhm. Gosh, and even as you were describing that, like, I started to viscerally feel that mismatch, and it can take a while to recover from a mismatch like that, and I think the longer you're in it, the longer it starts to look normal, feel normal, even though it's anything but normal. So how do you identify that mismatch? So when you say, "I can spot it," how do you know? What's your sense that that's going on there?
Well, I think sometimes you can break it down into very simple things.
Mhm,
So one thing is, I surround myself with people that are interesting and interested,
mhm,
both. But they're not there to tell me what makes them so interesting. They're there to be interested in me and I'm interested in them and we're curious.
mhm,
And so the very first thing is I find that if I'm hanging out with somebody and I really love their energy and I love who they are, I'm immediately attracted in a positive way towards whatever it is they're doing. So I want to
mhm,
learn more about them. And when I want to learn more about a person, I start to think of all the things that exist out there, and a lot of times you find that those individuals are curious,
yeah,
they're intense, they're hardworking, but
mhm,
maybe they haven't gotten their break. Maybe they haven't found what makes them unique and then executed upon it.
mhm,
I think what people find when they get to that point is they know how to go all in on, for me it's connection,
mhm,
it's developing that level of a relationship over a transaction. It's the simplicity of something like that that I would find myself in rooms and I'm able to identify where I belong and where I don't very
mhm,
quickly.
yeah,
And that means that you hone in on that skill and build it. So I think what I'm saying is it's not as hard as people think it is. It's,
mhm,
are you curious? Are you hardworking? Do you love what you do? Is there a passion around something? Now,
mhm,
how do you take that and execute it at a higher level instead of being um, you know, somebody else's profit, maybe?
yes, yes, and what you're saying, it makes me think about the contagious nature of stress. And how what you're describing when you're around people who are interested, when you're around people who are interesting, and you're talking about them having this optimistic way, it has an impact on you. There's a metamorphosis, or if they are a not metamorphosis. What's the plant? Well, anyway,
Uh,
can't remember the word. Anyway, uh, but it has this impact on you, and so stress does the exact same thing, but in a really negative way. And so if you're surrounding yourself, or if you're in a workplace where everyone around you is burning out or experiencing high levels of stress, it's going to impact you. I saw that the American Psychological Association calls stress and anxiety the emotions of community, because it's almost impossible to be around someone who's experiencing that and for you to not pick up on it in some way. And so what I often tell leaders who are resistant to the work or are hesitant about the work, I say, if you're not willing to do it for yourself, then do it for your team, because how you're showing up at work is having a huge impact on the people around you.
so if somebody out there realizes that they're overinvested in work, they're neglecting everything else, what are the first 3 steps to rebuild their life?
I think the first one is to pause. And you mentioned that earlier, which is to just slow down, because I think I've never looked back at a moment in my life where I took a thoughtful approach and regretted it. But I think about times where I just jumped in without thinking, and then there's some regret. So I think step 1 is we just have to slow down and figure out what the heck is really happening here. Secondly, is to take inventory of where am I and where am I trying to go? How did things get off track? How did I end up where I am? And then third, and maybe the most important one, is to surround yourself with the support system that you need. So, unfortunately, the research shows that in times of stress, in the times of our lives where we need help the most, are the times we're the least likely to ask for it. And so stress thrives in isolation and relief comes through connection. So when you're at that place, even if the tendency is to isolate, do the opposite. Do what might even feel counterintuitive and seek support and connection.
Yeah, it's a cycle, right? So when
Mhm.
someone's going through this challenge, I remember being super young and building a business and coming home and then having young kids and then
Yeah.
getting them to bed and then putting on a movie because it's like 9:30 at night and I'm like, "Well, I got to do something for myself." And so
Sure.
then you stay up till 12:30 and you're exhausted in the morning. You woke up in the middle of the night multiple times.
Mhm.
And now I wear a Whoop, I track my sleep, I go to bed early. Like everything changes.
Right.
And part of that's just getting older, folks. But
Sure.
for the younger people listening, you could change it earlier.
Yes.
And it is definitely a great 3-step process to readapt your life.
I was laughing because when you were describing that, I'm like, "Was Scott in our house last night?" Because I think that's I think that's what my evening looked like yesterday. And there will be nights like that. There is gonna be
Yeah.
these moments of, "Okay, now I just have to recalibrate. I gotta get back on track." For sure.
Well, I found that I needed time to me for me.
Yeah.
And and if I didn't feel like I had it, I needed to reboot, and so what I started to do was refocus on what that meant.
Yes.
Saying I didn't have time for me was not a viable option. It was, what does that mean? So little things like working out in the morning, reading scripture first thing in the morning for me, having time to pray and meditate and
Mhm,
work out, eat a healthy breakfast, and then move on. I've already felt like I've accomplished something before I start my day.
mhm.
So by the time I start today, so much has been accomplished that I could go to bed when I get home and be fine.
Right. That's a great way to start the day. And I think, because 'cause I'm the same way. The way that I'm wired, I really do need alone time. It really is how I recharge, and so I spent my 50th birthday I went on a cruise by myself to ring in my 50th birthday, and I called it my family of 4, party of 1 cruise because I had never done that since the kids were born. I'd never gone on 8 days by myself. And I will tell you, it was amazing. So I had 1 chapter left in the book, so I thought, "I'm just gonna go on a cruise. I'm gonna write the last chapter. It's gonna be this sort of soulful adventure," and it was pretty great. And it's funny because I also have a therapist. I think the most successful leaders have coaches, therapists, or usually both. So I was telling her when I was thinking about going on this cruise, I was like, "But what are my kids gonna think? What does it say to my kids that I don't wanna spend my 50th birthday with them? What does it mean that I'm not gonna be here at home on my 50th birthday?" And she had the most beautiful answer, which was that what you're showing them is how important it is to take care of you. It's like, yes, of course, the most routine advice ever, but it really was transformative to just go away for a week for the sole purpose of joy and fun.
Well, they say that writing your first book is also a form of therapy.
Mhm.
And when you get to the last part, I was supposed to have my book come out in February, early March, late February of 2020. And
Oh.
so COVID hits, everything changes. We decide to hold. We're a year later, like every story feels stale. I'm on the third edit,
Yeah.
and booked a I booked a concert. I went out to Floyd Fest, one of my favorite bands, the Avett Brothers, were playing out there in Floyd County, Virginia. It's in
Mhm,
Southwest Virginia in the mountains, and I got a cabin and I brought my manuscript and I
mhm.
did the same thing. I spent a week going to a concert, I had a tent. I've never stayed in the
This
tent
is
before.
amazing.
I didn't even stay in the tent when I was there, but I set the tent up, and then the family next to me used it the whole time. And they had two young kids. I
I love
became
it.
friends with them. I had a great
Yeah.
time, and I spent the week waking up in the morning, being
Mhm.
fresh, working on the book, then going out midday, having lunch, and then seeing a band. Some days it came back early, some days, and then my sister met me for the last day,
Oh, it's so
and we went to
nice.
the show together, and then we came back from there. And so it feels uncomfortable when you have a family to do something like that, and you don't have to go for a full week. You don't have to go just because you're
Sure.
finishing a book, but it does do good for you to get away and reset and recharge because you're better for the people in your life that you love when you have the ability to do that.
Yes, and even from a neuroscience perspective, it's when we're the most creative. So it's no wonder that you finished. Did you finish it while
I
you were
did
away?
finish. Yeah, I finished and launched immediately. It's also
Nice.
hard. It's also
Yeah.
hard because I want you to get to the neuroscience point. I'm sorry about that, but
No,
it's also
please.
hard because you're in a position where you're putting yourself out there to the world. And it's very uncomfortable when you start to put something in print because it's forever. Like video, we can continue to mold and migrate and change and alter and have our own metamorphosis. And but we could do any of that. But in the book, once it's there, how is it going to be received? How is
Yeah.
and there was a lot of concern, and I'm sure you felt the same thing.
It is one of the most vulnerable things in the world. When I wrote the first draft, I talked about how the summer of my burnout, I had over 100 panic attacks. And each time I went through the editing process, that line, I just froze. And so I changed over 100 to dozens. And then the next round of editing, Scott, I changed it to many. And then in the next round, I took it out altogether. And in the very last round, the round of Leneker, you get one more shot at this, and then this puppy is off to print. I put it back in because I had been worried about exactly what you were saying. I'm going to put this sentence in. The world's going to see it. I can't take it back. But I thought that's what the point of telling this story is, that yes, I did have 100 panic attacks in one summer. That was part of my burnout story, but it was also part of my healing story. And so to be able to just recognize that we can't control how people receive it, but to just say, this is the truth as it happened to me, and to just stand in that. And the book isn't even out yet, but I'll tell you, it's the sentence I'm most proud of because every time I look at it, I remember all those edits of feeling shame and taking it out. And then in the end, just saying, I'm just going to tell it like it was.
Well, you're right where you're supposed to be. I say this all the time. Wherever you are right now in life, you are right where you're supposed to be. But when you can actually share parts of your story that you know will help other people, that you
Mhm.
know will identify things that other people are going through, and it adds value to the story that you've built to this point. So
Yeah.
it is worth sharing, and it's definitely, and I think when you do write a book, you go through I remember having a particular topic I had written about my dad in the book, and the first version I felt like I was almost like a child in my response. And then I rewrote
Oh,
it, and in the second one it was better, and by the third one I was like, I'm so proud of how he responded and how I responded. And it was almost like that therapy session where you're working through something where your initial thought is childlike,
yes.
but the more you developed it and the more you thought it through the lens of me as a father and
Mhm.
me knowing who they are and their imperfections and all those things, it opens up. And so it becomes a better deliverable for the reader, but it's also a better deliverable for you. And it's
Yes.
part of your story. So I also think there's something else that's really interesting in this, and that is you really know yourself when you are willing to go somewhere alone. So if you're willing to go somewhere alone,
Mhm,
I go to concerts all the time by myself.
mhm.
You know why? My wife loves to go, but
Yeah.
if there's a concert, she struggles to make it to 9 o'clock. I have to hear
I
we have a
love her.
great dinner. We have a
Uh-huh.
great dinner. We have a great time. We
Mhm.
get to the concert and she's already ready to leave. I don't care how good they are. And I'm so tired of
Yeah,
trying to convince her to stay
that's
or
amazing.
fighting or negotiating or
Sure.
whatever we're doing. So
Mhm.
I just buy 2 tickets to almost every show.
Yes.
And I go by myself,
Mhm.
and I'm not offended. I sometimes even hire a driver to take me to and from,
Perfect.
and if
Yes.
I'm driving into the city or something in DC, if I'm up that way, and I do a lot of goofy things that reward me in a way that I wouldn't normally do it,
Yeah.
and I do it with movies too.
Yes.
And I know that it sounds it's I eat alone sometimes, but I see this. I love people, by the way. I'm not a
Mhm.
loner. I get charged from people,
Yes.
but this is knowing who you are.
That's right. Exactly. And what a different work world we would have if we could do that. If that awareness came sooner. I'm just laughing at the idea of your wife falling asleep at night. I feel like she and I would be great friends
A
because we would
hun
never text each other after 9 p.m.
No. No,
That'd be great.
all the texts that come in after 8:30 or 9, she responds at, like, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's 5:30, 6 o'clock. She's responding, and it's the
Sure.
night before's texts that are coming
Right.
through. And
That's
and
perfect.
that's for being a teacher and waking
Of
up at 5
course.
AM every day. Like,
Yes.
it's her style, but it's also, um, I she has no FOMO.
Yeah.
She's never had FOMO. She doesn't care about
Yep.
missing anything, and
Yes.
I can't wait. Like, my son was sending us he went to see Sam Barber last night,
Mhm.
and he was sending us videos, and my youngest son and my wife were both asleep, and
Uh-huh.
I'm, like, liking them and commenting, and I'm super excited. Not that I'm
That's
a night
so
owl, but
kind.
I
Yeah.
wanted to see the experience. I wanted to be a part of
Sure.
it. So, Amy, look, I'm looking forward to the book when it comes out. So
Thank
when is it
you.
coming out?
March 24th.
It's really close. So
It's really close.
March 24th, 2026. Cheers to Monday, the surprisingly simple method to lead and live with less stress and more joy. And who doesn't want that?
Thank you. That's what I've been saying all along. Yes.
So, Amy, thank you so much for being a guest today. It's been a blast, and I love your energy. It's been fun to learn from you. And I look forward to the book coming out and watching your story.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
So YouTube has this feature where they pick the best video for you to watch next. So I hope you enjoy this next video.